Yesterday we mentioned in The Life of Padmasambhava that Lamo Tsen of Chim and Lady Tsogyal of Karchen were actually not present at the empowerment venue at first. But then, by paying homage to Guru Rinpoche, they instantly arrived at the edge of the mandala. From that moment on, they actually renounced all worldly affairs and embarked on the path of Dharma practice. And the testament mentions that the two of them went to practice at a very young age, so they didn't participate in building the temples of Samye. The text is clearly referring to this point. When the empowerment ended, the king's palace guards recounted the entire process to the ministers. Yet none of them believed it, thinking that Guru Rinpoche could not possibly possess such power. Usually when it comes to Padmasambhava, we tend to think that he accomplished everything through miracles and miraculous powers. He subdued those who needed subduing and established what needed establishing as if it were all very easy. However, in reality, from a historical perspective, he still had to deal with many complex situations in his manifestations. This includes the challenges involving Guru Rinpoche's empowerment consorts. As we discussed yesterday, King Trisong Detsen's consort, Chepong Zame Togdron, was actually a non-Buddhist heretic. Indeed, some historical records indicate that she was involved in many controversial actions. As we mentioned earlier, these included the exile of Yeshe Tsogyal and Vairotsana. She even went so far as to kill her own son, Mune Tsenpo. In fact, figures like her are quite common in the histories of other countries. There are always people like that. Conversely, there are also remarkable women like Yeshe Tsogyal. I remember that when I traveled abroad and visited a university, the students there were studying her biography. At that time, I found it truly amazing. Scholars like Professor Janet Gyatso from Harvard University were actively teaching and researching it. Later, I found that we have source materials on this as well. While the Tibetan versions are numerous, there is a Chinese translation published by the Gansu Ethnic Publishing House. However, it doesn't really say who the translator was. Later, our Dharma friends here suggested an English version, and they studied that as well. Well, from this biography, we can see that the life of Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal wasn't easy either. How did she get her start? She made her way up step by step to attain her realization, and every stage was incredibly challenging. Later, after Guru Rinpoche arrived, she took the Bhikshuni vows in the presence of the Guru. This account was recorded by Lalung Palgi Yanchup, who was one of the first 7 ordained monks in Tibet, as well as one of the 25 great disciples of Guru Rinpoche. He put this down in writing together with Namkhai Ningpo. This biography of Yeshe Tsogyal was later included in the Terma of Tasham Nuden Dorje, and it can also be found in other Terma works. But this specific version is widely accepted and carries a certain academic credibility. It was discovered around the 17th century. So I truly feel that we, especially the female practitioners, should learn the inner strength of these women. In this, figures like Yeshe Tsogyal and Mandarava are true role models. They embody the essence of feminine wisdom. Professor Janet Gyatso has done some extensive research on Yeshe Tsogyal. She is a feminist. She put so much heart and effort in this field when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche visited the United States in 1993. So, through their inspiring stories, many women have gained a sense of extraordinary resilience and conviction. This inspiration is truly important. The commentary also clarifies that the dakinis gathered around Guru Rinpoche should not be viewed from an ordinary worldly perspective as a form of mundane romance. Whether it is Mandarava or Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal, as recorded in biographies, their spiritual accomplishments in the generation and completion stages transcended all ordinary human behavior. Therefore, it was by relying on such power of realization that they propagated the sublime Dharma. In particular, their pure devotion to the Dharma, their unshakable faith in the Dharma, and their devotion to the Guru are beyond what words can normally describe. Yet during this period, many malicious ministers tried every possible way to sow discord. This is clearly shown in the text. During the groundbreaking ceremony for the king's temples, they needed the 2 most beautiful virgins in the Tibetan region to stretch the lines for layout of the mandala. At that time, no one knew who the most beautiful women in the Tibetan region were. While people were debating this, someone noted that Padmasambhava possessed the power to summon them and said that if this is indeed true, then let's request Guru Rinpoche to begin the ritual of summoning. So Guru Rinpoche entered into deep meditation. Just a few moments later, Chogroza Wuchungman and Chogroza Lhawuman appeared at the site out of nowhere. The wisdom deities then descended upon them, just like how Dharma protectors possess mediums nowadays, and they were directed to hold the boundary lines. This is also recorded in the Testament of Ba. At that time, it seems that Guru Rinpoche was preparing to cast some Buddhist statues in the Tibetan region. When planning the production of these statues, he actually consulted the king on whether they should follow the Indian artistic style or the local Tibetan style. The king replied that it would be best to use the Tibetan style. Thus, when the artisans crafted the female statues, it appears that the statue of Marisi was modeled after Chogroza Wuchungman. Then the statue of Tara was modeled after Chogroza Lahaman. When crafting the male statues, the statue of Hayagriva was sculpted using a strong man named Marsagong as the model. And among the men of that time, Wakontonse was considered a remarkably handsome person. They created the statue of Avalokiteshvara based on him. So generally speaking, just as Gendan Chopel described, Indian people crafted statues according to the Indian artistic style, while the Tibetan people followed their own. This account is recorded in the Testament of Ba. Lately, I couldn't really find it in either Tibetan or Chinese. However, I knew it exists in the Testament of Ba. You can look into it later. Therefore, logically speaking, the large-scale casting of sacred statues in the Tibetan region probably began in the 8th century, around the time when Guru Rinpoche arrived. Before that period, it is quite difficult to say for certain whether authentic Buddhist statues even existed in Tibetan region. Although during the reign of Lha Thothorin Nyantsen, which was around the 3rd century AD, the very first dawn of the Dharma began. Later, during the reign of King Songtsen Gampo, the 2 Jowo statues arrived, one from the Han region and the other from Nepal. Yet historical accounts do not mention any other statues being present at that time. As we know, King Songtsen Gampo was the 33rd king, while King Trisong Detsen was the 37th. The period between them lasted about 100 years. Although there were 5 kings in the interim, none of their reigns lasted very long. Thus, the true flourishing of Buddhism in the Tibetan region really began in the 8th century AD. It was only then that authentic hearing, contemplation, and meditation emerged, along with the monastic community and Buddhist canon. That's why many great masters often say that if you compare the Han region with Tibetan region, Buddhism actually arrived much earlier in the Han region. There's a difference of several centuries between the two. In the Han region, it was during the Western and Eastern Han dynasties. Buddhism was already around during the Western Han, which was BCE, but it officially arrived during the Eastern Han dynasty. At the White Horse Temple in Loyang, the masters Dharmaratna and Kasyapa Matanga arrived with a white horse carrying the sacred scriptures and objects of the 3 jewels. And then they built the temple there. Between that era and the reign of Lha Thothorin, there is actually a gap of several centuries. So in terms of the rise of Buddhism, we can say that it happened a bit later in the Tibetan region. But in any case, the real Dharma didn't exist until Guru Rinpoche arrived in Tibet. Only then were the true teachings and sacred statues established. The text describes it in exactly this way. These 2 noble ladies served as the models for those sacred statues. It is said that later on, even after looking through all the Tibetan people, no one could find anyone more beautiful than them. They could well be considered the most beautiful women of that era. At this point, the ministers began to plot in secret, saying, "This tantric master," referring to Guru Rinpoche, "has sent all the extraordinary people and treasures of Tibetan region away to India." When it comes to these unique and remarkable figures, people tend to view them through a political lens. It is the same nowadays. With just a bit of dissatisfaction, they start saying, oh, they're not being loyal. They must have their own hidden motives. The malicious ministers acted out of fear. Deep down, they surely knew that Guru Rinpoche would never do such things, but they just disliked him on purpose. It is said there was a minister named Khenpo Datsha. He had no faith in the Dharma at all, and he schemed in his mind, we must burn down the area of Drakmar Chamsang and this tantric master. Drakmar Chamsang is the location of Sammi, though the text includes the word and. It actually means the site of Drakma Chamsang, which is where Sami was built. He wanted to burn it all down, both Sami and Guru Rinpoche. When he approached Guru Rinpoche questioned him right in front of the assembled ministers, asking, "Are you planning to burn me alive? Are you planning to set fire to the entire area of Sami?" Overwhelmed with intense shame, the minister rushed out and said, "This barbarian from the borderlands knows absolutely everything." There was another individual named Wetongtse who harbored immense malice toward the sublime Dharma. Guru Rinpoche said, "Before long this man will seize immense power and will completely ban the propagation of Buddhism. So the time to subjugate him has arrived." With that, Guru Rinpoche focused his mind in a moment of blessing. As a result, the man immediately began to bleed from every pore of his body and passed away on the spot. In truth, Mantrayana does possess this kind of mantra power. Leaving aside someone as extraordinarily powerful as Guru Rinpoche, many practitioners and yogis nowadays also wield similar spiritual abilities. They can truly execute subjugation. So some people today are actually scared, saying, "Even though we have to do this, please do not cast wrathful mantras against us. Otherwise, things will go terribly wrong for my family." It's not necessarily chanted intentionally, but honestly, you just never know with these things. Having witnessed one after another the power of Guru Rinpoche to subdue both humans and non-humans, these malicious ministers grew deeply anxious. They worried that if Guru Rinpoche stayed in Tibetan region, it would turn out bad for them. So they tried absolutely everything they could just to get Guru Rinpoche to go back to India. During this period, Guru Rinpoche suggested to the king, "Your Majesty, this place could actually become so much better." Even though Guru Rinpoche knew exactly what was going on, he still went ahead and told the king, "In our Tibetan region, things could be so much better. The desert of Ashu can be transformed into green oases. Furthermore, within the regions of Dradi, Dodi, and across the greater area of Dala, water can be made to spring forth from arid places. All the riverbanks can be turned into fertile fields, thereby ensuring a secure livelihood for all Tibetan citizens. We can gather treasures from Vaisravana, the great king of wealth, so that the whole of Tibetan region becomes the ultimate source of wealth for the entire continent of Jambudvipa. We can also divert the waters of the Yarlung Tsangpo River into canals. In the past, I have successfully executed irrigation projects much larger than this. You will even be able to extend your sovereignty over Mongolia and other foreign lands." He provided an extensive description of these plans. Well, let's stop here for today.
Bandharangara Padmasambhava Bandharangara Padmasambhava Bandharangara Padmasambhava